We've talked about lots of different things. One of the things we were talking about was different ideas and different strategies to try and kind of zhuzh up the town centre, make it look nice, try and bring shoppers back into the town centre, and I guess the right kind of demographic of shoppers as well, trying to get those people that have got money to spend and want to have a nice day out. And I think one of the things that people are concerned about is possibly the parking charges and the fact that, you know, there's places that you can go to shop where it's very cheap to park. The out of town shopping centres, often you don't have to pay to park there, and the town centre is trying to compete with those, and yet in your budget consultation at the moment, you're asking for people's feedback on plans to potentially increase the parking charges in the town centre. So what's the sort of thinking behind that?
I mean, I hate parking charges. We all hate them, don't we?
Nobody likes paying.
Nobody likes parking. You can't gloss that one up, can you? You pay for parking. There is a cost to provide parking. A lot of people don't know, for example, you pay business rates on a car park. So take the Marehold car park just across from where we are now, the multi-storey car park. You pay business rates on that like you do a business office accommodation, and the council doesn't keep that. Most of that money goes off to the government. I think we sometimes get to keep a small part. So there's that, first of all, and there's maintenance costs and so on. So there is, if you like, there's some fairly hefty costs attached to parking. So there is no such thing as free parking. The question is who pays for it. So you either get the motorist to pay for it or you get the general taxpayer to pay for it. That's, you know, every man, woman and child who pays council tax. So that's the dilemma there. Now, in our budget at the moment, there's big challenges for all councils. There's not a council in the country who hasn't got a financial challenge, and there's probably 2 or 3 reasons. Similar to ours, there are more adults requiring social care than before. There are more children having been through trauma and needing to be taken into care. Costs like temporary accommodation have gone up. I think that's stabilised a bit more now, maybe even come down slightly, but these costs have been rising. And of course, everything we do is subject to inflationary costs, just like everybody else. So, you know, costs have gone up. The pay settlement was £6 million more than expected, because quite rightly we had to pay more than we would have anticipated this time last year. It's amazing to think back to this time last year. You know, inflation, we just hadn't got a concept of how much it was going to be. So costs are up.
So the council employs 3,000 people, doesn't it? And they've all needed to have a pay rise.
Yeah. So some of whom are not full time, but yeah, it's roughly about 3,000 souls make their living working through, and that's quite right. And one of the things we've set out, you have to remember the history of this council was formed as a unitary council, bringing 4 or 3.5 councils together. That's half of the county council, and then Daventry, South Northampton, Northampton district councils. And one of the big reasons that happened was the financial failure at the county council. You know, councils can't go bankrupt, but that's basically the equivalent of it. The council went bankrupt. So we can never set a budget that we can't honestly believe we can deliver. The old council were accused of being slightly in denial when they set budgets, and you know, not being perhaps as clear that they really were going to be able to deliver these budgets year after year. They failed to deliver the budget. We can never, ever let that happen. And when this inflation and the cost pressures and so on started, largely back at the start of this financial year, our first year as a council, we hit the budget bang on, all was fine. But as costs started to escalate and councils were feeling the squeeze, we were one of the first to highlight this. Because of the track record, we felt the right thing was to tell people early, look, there is a gap appearing here in the budget. At that point, it was about £10 million. A lot of councils said, well, that's almost a blip, because, you know, the budget does go up and down quite significantly throughout the year. But no, we could see a trend emerging here, and we had to be honest about it. So since then we've done a number of different steps internally. We have spending restrictions. Basically means that if you're in a department and you have something that you want to spend on, it could be a project or whatever it might be, you have to take it to a spending panel, which is an independent panel made up of our officers who kind of give it, if you like, a bit of a critique. They'll bounce it around. They'll test you on your project to see how strong you are about it, and decide that yes, it's a good investment or it's not. So everybody has that discipline on spending. We've continued what we call transformation, which is where you find economies by the councils coming together and reducing costs and so on. We've retendered contracts. So I don't know, for example, mobile phones. Quite a lot of people use mobile phones in the operation for the daily business. We've retendered that, reduced the cost of that dramatically. So we have literally squeezed millions and millions and millions of pounds, tens of millions of pounds, out of the operation, but it still hasn't quite bridged the gap. So what's the sort of shortfall that you're dealing with at the moment? Well, no, we now are consulting on a budget budget that is balanced. What we are projecting to spend and what we are projecting will come in, in terms of income from council tax, government grants, fees and charges, does balance. We absolutely have to set a balanced budget, and what's more, we've absolute faith in it. There's nothing guesswork or hope in it. It's really careful, small c conservative, if you like, really cautiously set, and we've even put a bit of contingency in, which kind of says if suddenly we get a major problem coming along, we've a little bit of money put by there as a cushion. Which is what we should do. But the point being, we've had to challenge every single penny that we spend, and every single penny has been challenged. But at the same time, you have to look at every penny that comes in, and it's awful putting fees and charges up. Parking charges here in Northampton, they haven't kept pace with inflation over recent years. This is pretty much an inflationary rise. Certainly, 10% on the rate per hour. There are a couple of other charges coming in, so it's not just a straight 10% increase on those costs. Some of them are new charges that weren't charged before. We've got on and off a little bit with some free parking, but that's the background to it. And absolutely horrible to have to do it, but it's horrible when you put any cost up, and a lot of people might be critical of that cost. What we don't tend to hear is the alternatives. What in our position would you do? It's very easy to say you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, but viable alternatives. A lot of people have alternatives for everybody else should pay this, not me type stuff. But actually, when it comes to it, we've got to balance the books, and we will never, we hope, be in the same situation where we have to tell people their council is going bust.
Yeah, absolutely. But is there not an argument to say that by reducing parking costs, you incentivise businesses to come into the town centre that then generates more money for the council?
Absolutely, and every shop here in Northampton could say that if they reduce their prices by 25%, they'd get more customers too. But actually, we have to balance the books. I come from the commercial world. Most of my life has been in, in business sort of environment. I've never been involved in any business where the more customers you get, the worse off you are. Normally, the more customers you get in my sort of job career, the better you are. But actually, we have a set budget, and we don't know exactly how many children are going to walk through the door and need to be taken care of, and how many adults will come through. What we do know is we have to set best guess at our budget. And just like my example, and people will say that was a facetious example, why don't shops drop their costs by 25%? But it is true, if they did, they would, and the reason is they can't. They have overheads, they have rent, they have rates to pay, they have staff to pay, and they pitch their pricing at the best level they can. But in a similar way, our fees and charges, they have to cover the cost of all sorts of other operations. They have to cover the cost of running the town centre, and all in all, we have to do a balanced budget. I absolutely hate it. I wish we could do parking free at use, because of course it would be an added incentive to drag people in. But I think you have to realise also that nobody does this without caring, and nobody comes into local politics without really caring and wanting to prove that. I grew up, as you know, in Northampton. It's been my hometown. It means everything to me, and that's why I feel a lot of joy that we're doing the improvement projects, and a lot of sadness when I look around and I see a place that's not what I remember it being. It hasn't got that vibrancy and so on. So no one will want to put parking fees and charges up any more than they absolutely have to. But there is an economic reality here that we have to face up. And I just promise all those people who have heard this, spent a couple of minutes thinking about it. Every minute you've spent thinking about it, I've spent tens and hundreds of hours trying to find alternatives, trying to do the things that have the lowest impact on people negatively if it is a fee and charge rise. And parking's not the only one that we've had to look at. As I say, whatever the nature of the fee and charges, and there are many hundreds of different fees and charges that you'll pay for different things. You pay a modest fee when you apply for a blue badge, for example, to the council. There's a fee for that. So all these things looked at, and all in all, we think this is about the answer. We're still talking. The consultation finishes tonight for our budget. People can still get online and give their. So
how do you have your say if you've got some feedback on this, and maybe you've got a better suggestion, or you just want to kind of look at the numbers and see, see if what you're saying it rings true, and that actually there isn't really anywhere that you can move a little money from this pot to that pot.
You can see it all on our website. I think you jump on our website, which is westnorthants.gov.uk, westnorthants.gov.uk. on the front page there's a link. It is only till today. It's till tonight, the end of the month, so midnight tonight.
And then what do you do with all of those responses to your consultation? What happens to those?
Yeah, every single one is looked at. So we've been looking at them as they come in. So it's been a month or so consultation, and continually monitored. So I get a summary through of them. Incidentally, they put them into an Excel spreadsheet, and I've had that on a weekly basis to look through. I haven't read. We've had over 1,000, so I have glanced through all the comments. You go into a particular column and you can spin down.
Excel's great for that, though, isn't it?
It is. It's a wonderful tool. So I can pretty much say that I've looked through all of them, but certainly the finance team and others have looked really, really carefully and pored over them. We're also still talking about this with the BID, the Business Improvement District that represents all the town centre businesses. Just last night had a meeting with a few key directors from the BID there to continue chatting. I wonder if there's more we can do about structure. So previously at the Borough Council, we'd had a long meeting with the BID and they'd formed a little group and they were saying, well, can we try and influence the charges so that they cause people to do this or they cause people to do that? One of the things we did at that time was we tried to influence it so that the parking spaces were free in the town centre for shoppers. So the aim being then, if you work in town and 5 days a week you're in here 9 to 5, instead of you taking a space that could be used by a shopper, we made it a little cheaper for you to park out at St Michael's car park up on Abingdon Square there, and it gives you a 5-10 minute walk into work, but actually if you can save 10 quid a week on your parking or something like that, it makes it worthwhile for somebody who's working. But it means that the grown-up spaces were free for shoppers. That was an idea that came for the BID. I do still hope that perhaps we can find some ways of doing that. Some town centre businesses tell me that they struggle sometimes to get apprentices in who they want to, or perhaps young people who are, it's their first job and they're paid, but they live in a village so they use a car to come in or something like that. So whether we can incentivise that it's easier to keep apprentices and young people that you can train up and can get to understand the business, there might be something we can do. We're talking with the BID like that last night.
Okay, so you're having all of these sort of conversations and thinking of ideas.
There's an economic reality, which is just simply that. I mean, and to put it bluntly, as you know, we can increase our council tax by just under 3%, 2.99%. We can add another couple of percent specifically to be spent on adult social care. Inflation, I mean, it's starting to come down again now, isn't it? Thank goodness. But it has been up to 10%. And that's what we see, industrial action over pay and so on. And we are a little bit like a household. We have a budget. We can increase our income through council tax by 5%. And we've seen inflation go up by 10%. We have to look at the fees and charges. And that's the sad reality of it.
Well, I think probably a lot of people that don't want to pay the parking charges probably also don't want their council tax going up too much.
No, of course they don't. So. Who wants to? I didn't come into this job just to put people's fees up. It's a real shame, isn't it? It's a real shame, but it is one of the realities, really. We see the cost of everything going up, don't we? In the
Absolutely.
supermarket and so on.
Okay, we're going to chat some more after this from the notorious B.I.G.